We're at the North American International Auto Show this week. We talk cars and industry. Plus, Senator Gary Peters joins us and the deportation story from Michigan that has caused national outrage. Stay put. MiWeek is coming up right now.
Did you know Gordon Food Service was started by a 23-year-old entrepreneur as a butter and egg delivery business more than a century ago? In 1948, school teacher Gerard Wendell Hayworth borrowed $10,000 from his parents to start a woodworking operation in his family's garage. It's now Hayworth Incorporated. These are just some of the ways Michigan's pioneers started out as small companies with big ideas.
We are business leaders for Michigan. We are committed to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Funding for this program is provided by Delta Airlines. Keep climbing.
Hi there, welcome to MiWeek. I'm Christy McDonald. I'm so glad that you're joining me. It is all about the cars this week in Detroit. Oh yeah, and that meteor that flashed through the sky. Chances are you worked in the industry, have a relative that does, or you love the car that you drive. And how the auto industry does and where it's going has a major impact on where we live, our economy, and success of the state. There is a lot to look at, from electric vehicles, the future of mobility, technology, and the importance of auto shows in the future. But let's face it, you can't help but be awestruck by the shiny grills and new car smell. So Nolan Finley, Stephen Henderson, and myself, along with our crew from DPTV, went down to Cobo this week to take a look.
My mother in 1986 or 1987 bought a car off the floor here at the auto show.
What did she buy?
She bought one of those Astro vans.
Where's that Astro van
This
now?
is a big part of Detroit's history. We've been talking to folks all week long about what this industry is going to look like.
You know, I think it's going to continue to be, but it's going to be really interesting to see how it morphs. Even though we might change transportation a bit, people are still going to care what kind of car they drive.
So what do you guys think of the show so far? I mean, you've had a chance to walk around a little bit, see the shiny cars.
It does not seem as hype as normal.
It's a little quieter today during press week than I've noticed.
But it's a good
before,
show. It's a
Nolan.
beautiful show. Solid selection of models here. Most of the manufacturers are here. It's not the big dramatic shows of past where curtains are coming off things every 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's a solid show. This is good product and it's well displayed. I think people are going to enjoy it.
Detroit is still a high point when it comes to the auto shows. You obviously have LA, which takes a big role, in New York as well. But it really got me to thinking as I was looking around, wondering what is an auto show going to look like 5 to 10 years from now when we're talking about so much change in the industry,
It's going to be a gadget
right?
show instead of an auto show.
You think it's just going to be a gadget show?
Stuff, it's showing off what your car can do that it doesn't do right now.
I still contend that people are really going to care about what their vehicle looks like, even though they might be sharing it with someone else or they might be catching rides. I don't know. I still think we're going to care what it looks like.
I still think it's going to look a lot like this. I don't think these automakers are going to stop making these sort of vehicles. I think a lot of these vehicles may have different drive systems in them. They may be much more electric. They may be self-driving vehicles that you own and put on the road. I don't think we can say yet what that future is going to look like.
Yeah, but what about fleet, though, when you're talking about people saying, we're not even going to own your own vehicle, you're just going to kind of call something up, something's going to pick you up, drop you off.
Sure.
I think that is not as far off as people think. And if you talk to young people, teenagers right now, they're aware of that. And their expectation almost is that their driving lives will look a lot different from ours and that autonomous vehicles will be sort of a center point of that.
I think that's a long, long way ahead. I think this is a long, slow process. I know the technology's rapidly developing, but to bring the consumers along, as Sergio Marchione of FCA said this week, the consumers aren't going nearly as fast as we are. Bill Ford said the same thing. So I think you're going to see a blend as the years go by, and the balance may start changing. But I think you will not get to the point where you don't own your own car. Maybe if you live in the city you don't, but I think most of us will still own our own cars.
Let's look at what GM is doing here, though. They come out and they say we're going to have driverless cars in our fleet in 2019. Now, what they mean by that is not that you or I are going to go buy one and have it on the road, but they do mean that services like Uber or Lyft may start to use those cars. Trucks shipping
and that's going to all be part of the transformation.
And that's sort of the gradual. Model. Once you're used to that, then it's not such a big leap.
I think it's really interesting though when you have someone like Chrysler saying that we're a little over our skis on this, and with electric vehicles that we're going to kind of stand back and see where things go. But you have Ford saying, oh, we're going to make sure that we have so much investment in electric vehicles in the next 10 years.
Well, Ford and GM have made the decision. They want to own this thing. They want a complete vertical integration. They want to own the technology, the management of the system, the servicing of the system, as well as the vehicles. They feel that's where the money's going to be made. FCA and Mark Henry, they're taking a more conventional look at this. And yeah, you may have a self-driving vehicle, but it'll be your vehicle, and you'll want it to look nice and be comfortable, and reflect your taste.
I think what's undeniable though is the shift in the industry away from the thinking of them being car companies and toward mobility companies. I think that's in and of itself really important. I mean, a really important change.
It is.
You know, a lot of lawmakers, politicians, and celebrities mingle among the journalists and industry leaders down at Cobo during press week. Sure, Kid Rock was there, but Nolan and Steven got a chance to talk with Senator Gary Peters about government regulation, as well as some politics and being asked to run for governor.
Senator Peters, you've taken the lead in the Senate on making sure the regulatory framework is in place by the time Detroit's ready to put self-driving cars on the road. Where does that stand now?
Well, it stands before the full Senate, so we've been working for some months on legislation that create a space to allow the technology to move forward, which is moving very, very quickly, as both of you know. And we're hoping to get it through the full Senate very shortly.
You've also been a real advocate of making sure that Detroit stays home to the manufacture of these vehicles, and that's a real competition. Silicon Valley is giving us a run for our money.
They are, but actually I think we should look at it as a partnership and folks coming here. And I'll tell you the reason I say that, I had an experience out in Silicon Valley. I travel out there regularly because of my work on this issue to get a sense of what they're doing. And I was with one of the major tech companies, I won't say which one, and they actually said, Senator Peters, we're working on all of the machine learning and artificial intelligence to navigate these vehicles. And we thought, well, maybe we should just make the vehicles too. They said, then we went to Detroit, and we went to an auto factory, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is a pretty complicated business.
It's not like building a phone.
It's not building a phone.
So when we talk about regulation, Senator Peters, it's not just about what happens within the car and traffic laws and what have you. It goes everything down to insurance and liability. And if the cars are driving themselves, who's liable in an accident? I mean, have you gotten that deep into this yet?
That is all part of the discussion and the policy, but certainly the auto companies know that if they're providing the vehicle, they're going to have a lot of the liability associated with it, which is another reason why they're making every effort to make sure they're crossing the T's and dotting the I's. Safety is paramount. And that's really, to me, is the most exciting thing about this self-driving technology, is that it's about reducing highway deaths. 95% of all traffic accidents are human error. And if you can take the human error out, at a time when nearly 50,000 people die on our highways every year, hundreds of thousands are injured, this is a big deal. This is about saving lives, which is why I've been pushing so hard to get this legislation to go quicker so that we can really keep up with the kind of technological innovation that we're seeing here at the show.
I mean, people have become accustomed to the idea that planes fly themselves, right? And that's made air travel so much safer. It's a harder sell, though, I think, with people on the roads. People still believe that they can drive a car better than the computer can.
Yeah, absolutely, and it'll take time, and the technology may not quite be there, but it will be there in the next 2 to 3 years. But you're going to have to build trust, and without trust, it's not going to work.
I'm curious, last year on Tuesday at this show, Joe Biden was here, a real show about the administration and what's going on, the interest from the administration. haven't seen anyone from the Trump administration here. What's the
Elaine Chao?
Oh, Elaine Chao is here. That's right. I should correct that. But what's the relationship between this administration and the industry? This issue of going forward with autonomous vehicles. Where are they playing a role?
Well, Elaine Chao has been active, so from the Department of Transportation perspective, we've had a good working relationship. She certainly understands the importance of this, which is why she's there. And we have a good relationship, I think, as we move the bill, we've also got to make sure that NHTSA and the administration is a part of it, and including our testing facilities. We have the American Center for Mobility, our MCity, that will hopefully the kind of cooperation with the federal government, particularly in validating these technologies. We're going to need them as partners. So I don't have any complaints on that end. We may argue that there's a little difference in the Obama administration was engaged in the auto rescue, was intimately involved in the auto industry. You don't have that in this administration, but hopefully it'll evolve.
But meanwhile, Detroit still has to make cars it can sell today and sell for the near term, and make cars that consumers want to buy. Right. And so part and parcel of that is this midterm review of the CAFE standards. The automakers want some relief. They don't believe they can hit 55 miles an hour or a gallon by 2025. Do you think they're going to get that relief, and how important is that to the industry's profitability?
Well, in some respects, in the industry I've talked to, I mean, they just want a little more flexibility when it comes to these rules. And right now, there's, they use the term harmonization. I mean, you have NHTSA rules, you have EPA rules. They sometimes don't. In California, they're not harmonized, so you don't know which way you're turned. It makes some sense to have that. But I also try to step back and take a bigger picture of where we're going to be in a few years, and we're seeing it here at this show, and that's the electrification of the fleet. Self-driving cars, this is engineers, this is an environmentalist or anybody else saying this. Engineers will tell you the power plant for a self-driving car is electric. The drive-by-wire, the instant torque, that's why General Motors, their self-driving car is the Chevy Bolt. It's electric. So we are moving to the electrification, and I think that's part of the reason why we've had these announcements from the companies of what they're doing.
So what do you make of Sergio Marchionne of Fiat Chrysler? He said on the show he's not so sure consumers will buy electric vehicles, and he sounded a note of caution that maybe the industry is moving too fast in that direction. Do we need a dose of pragmatism here?
Well, it should be driven by this technology, but I think you have a different view with both Ford and General Motors, who have announced a pretty comprehensive lineup of cars and trucks that they believe will be electrified. Even the folks at Chrysler tell me that they're looking at the Jeep Wrangler is electrified. Here you have an instant torque kind of motor. Right. So I think we're moving there. But again, if self-driving vehicles moves as quickly as it seems to be moving, and that's the direction we go. The engineers are saying, regardless of what consumers want, the engineers are saying you want an electric power plant that's going to be tied to that computer that's driving that vehicle down the road.
Yeah. Before we let you go, there was a story in Bridge this week said you had considered jumping into the race for governor and have said no. Why aren't you doing that?
Well, actually, so I've had folks come to me from various times asking me to run. I've always been focused on the U.S. Senate. Yeah. I ran to serve the people of Michigan in the U.S. Senate, and I intend to continue to do that. And
did you consider it?
I certainly. Folks who wanted to talk to me, I said I have a great deal of respect for you and I'm willing to hear you out, but I was very clear always to anybody I've talked to that I believe that my place is in the U.S. Senate. I need to do my job there. I have no shortage of issues that are very important to me.
So what is it about the current field of candidates that Democrats don't like?
Well, I don't want to speculate on some of that. I think you got to let the campaigns kind of work their way out too. We still have a few more months. It seems like the election's tomorrow. It's not. It's in November. And a lot can happen as the elections go forward. And I'm confident we'll have a good Democratic candidate that I'll get behind. Whoever he or she is, that'll be after the primary.
You look around the show and you say, is Detroit or has Michigan positioned itself to continue to be the leader in automotive mobility and where everything is going right now? Have we done enough?
I think we've done as good a job as anyone else. I think Silicon Valley made a hard run at it, but you see these automakers now partnering with each other and with Silicon Valley on developing this technology. They're leading sort of in the innovation and also leading in how the system's going to operate. All the various bits and pieces. That's what Jim Hackett at the CES show last week was talking about. We want to manage the system, you know, from everything from traffic lights to where your car actually goes to parking lots. That's a different look and a bigger look than anything we've heard from Silicon Valley. So they're clearly positioning themselves as the operators of the system.
So that's the other piece of the system. So we can talk about what the automotive companies are doing all day long and what kind of different vehicles or modes of transportation. But man, we have those infrastructure conversations about, okay, what are our cities going to look like? What kind of sensors do we need to have? What kind of smart neighborhoods to be able to support any kind of autonomous fleet? I feel that we're kind of far away.
We're really far behind
on that.
I mean, you think about it, we are behind in maintaining the infrastructure we need just so that we can drive our cars down the road, our not self-driving cars and not hit potholes and all that sort of thing. So we're nowhere near the kind of investments or upgrades that we're going to need for cars to drive themselves. I think that will come along as the industry creates these vehicles, though. I mean, I think that the demand for that infrastructure will drive the investment.
And I think for the next 25, 50 years, they're going to, the positioning of self-driving cars will be limited. There'll be places where you have self-driving cars within a city, within a congested urban areas, and places where they don't make sense. If it requires different sorts of roads and technology in the roads, that's going to make sense someplace in the Upper Peninsula where you get 5 cars going down a road a day. You're still going to have to get to all the places you need to get to in this country.
The other wild card here that I think that could enter some of the thinking is the safety issue, right? You think of the number of people who are killed in auto accidents. Once it becomes clear that having a computer operate the car is actually going to cut down on that number, that will also drive the culture and consumer preference in a way that I think we probably haven't necessarily anticipated.
But then do you look at liability, though, and then say who's responsible for that? Should there then be a crash?
No
Is
question.
it the designer of the software that maybe went wrong, or what? I mean, that ends up a lot of other questions.
You know, think of the airline industry and how planes have changed over the last 20 years to the point where very few times that a commercial airline pilot is actually piloting the plane. We just came off the first year in, I think, 30 years where there were 0 commercial airline deaths. I mean, the safety argument there is, I think, more powerful even than the liability or the responsibility argument.
Let me ask you, Nolan, this show's still really important for Detroit.
Oh yeah, it's enormously important for Detroit and for the industry as a whole. 5,000 journalists in here. There's things happening here that people care about and need to know about. Next week, you're going to have 800,000 people walk through here, many of them with the idea that they want to buy a car. It moves a lot of products still.
It still is a pretty cool place to be able to come and sit in a vehicle and maybe touch a lot of cars that you'd never get close to. I mean, if you walk around and
You come in here on Friday for the charity preview. I mean, there are people who save their money all year waiting to take their spouse to that event and dress up and go. I mean, it is still a big cultural. It is still a big cultural marker here. I don't think that's changed at all.
All right, sounds pretty good. Our thanks to Stephen and Nolan. You know, the North American International Auto Show opens up to the public on Saturday, and stay with Detroit Public TV for more stories about mobility and the changing industry. Turning now to the story of deportation that has captivated the country this week. Jorge Garcia from Lincoln Park was deported to Mexico this week after living in the U.S. for 30 years. He was brought here when he was 10, missing eligibility for the DACA program. He's married to a U.S. citizen, he has 2 children, he pays taxes, he has a job, and has tried to find a pathway to legal citizenship for years. He has no criminal record. The story has caused outrage across the country, and it's another look at how immigration policies are playing out in a Trump administration. Here at Detroit Public Television, as part of our One Detroit initiative, we're taking a closer look at how decisions are being made on immigration and giving you a look at the people and the families that they affect. Reporter Bill Kubota spent some time with the Garcia family last weekend, just before Jorge was sent back to Mexico.
Let's turn to the practical implication of that, because the big question in Washington now is chances for a deal on DACA. The president tweeted out this morning, DACA is probably dead because the Democrats don't really want it. They just want to talk and take desperately needed money away from our military. One, is DACA dead? Is there a chance for it?
Well, when I moved here, it was in 1989. It was when basically I first arrived to Chicago. Since then, I haven't been there, so.
We have said that, I have said that, the president has said that. We want to find a permanent solution to the DACA population, not a continual 3-year renewal period.
All right, in the short period of time we have left, I want to ask you.
Oh, you didn't pass me? No, you haven't passed me yet.
It's a mind game that you have to play with yourself to be happy for the next 20 minutes and then think about it again and then be happy for the next 20 minutes and then be sad for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, you too.
It's a roller coaster that you're dealing with.
He's almost as tall as you, Jesse.
And sometimes your heart just doesn't know what to think anymore. Okay, after Mass probably would be better.
I'll tell them that after Mass.
Okay.
After Mass.
Yeah.
I don't understand any of that goofy stuff.
None of us do. None of us do. It's rough. Whichever one you want. He is not a criminal. There's nothing on his record at all. Lord, we ask you on the 11th hour, make a miracle happen and keep our husband and father with us. It's a nightmare that you're waking up to. And it's hard to explain because it's like a funeral, but there's no body.
Loving, gracious God, we thank you for the great gift of family and great gift of fathers. And as Jorge goes forth this day, may he always know his great love that we have for him and the love that you have for him. We ask you to rid him of all anxiety, bring courage to his heart.
This started 13 years ago. They went to the wrong lawyer. Jorge wound up in removal proceedings, and then they appealed and went through a whole bunch of things. And I met Cindy first in May of 2012, and we've been fighting for stays of removal since then. We got a number of extensions through the Obama administration. And this is, I think if anybody were to meet them, I don't think there's anybody who would say this family should not be together. He doesn't even have traffic tickets.
There's no words anybody can say at this point in time that will heal me. My kids are devastated. I just hope that everybody who voted for Trump is very happy at this time, because this is what he did to my family.
I know he has to leave because it is our laws, but it's a law that needs to be changed. He's going to a country he does not know. I'm being left here with my kids to pick up the pieces and continue on and get the paperwork together so we can bring him back as fast as we can. According to the lawyer, the most he can be down there to get a date to the consulate is 18 months.
It's a good family, and he's a decent, low-key guy, and he's been the rock for Cindy.
You come and set us up to the ticket counter?
Get bags.
Yes.
He's getting deported because he came here as a child illegally, and that's what they're holding against him, that he entered the country illegally. So with that being said, he has to go back to his country of origin and reapply the right way to come in. He was brought here as a child, not as an adult. But according to the judge, when we had a hearing with the immigration judge, he said at 16, you know right from wrong, and at 16, he should have went back to his country of origin.
With the Trump agenda in place right now, there's not much we can do. we support with our finances and our time and our love. But today it came to an end, and the fine man was ripped away from his family and children, and I don't think I've ever seen anything more awful.
There are people working on Garcia's behalf, but we don't know when he will reunite with his family again. Go to MiWeek.org for more One Detroit stories about immigration. These stories won't be going away, and we'll bring them to you for perspective and for understanding. That is going to do it for MiWeek this week. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Christy McDonald. Join me next Thursday for MiWeek. Take care.
Did you know Roush Enterprises was selected by Google to assemble a test fleet of 100 prototype self-driving cars in 2015? It also produced the new Domino's delivery cars. And speaking of Domino's, Domino's sells well over 2 million pizzas per day around the world, and half of their sales are digital. These are just some of the ways Michigan's pioneers started out as small companies with big ideas.
We are business leaders for Michigan. We are committed to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Funding for this program is provided by Delta Airlines. Keep climbing.